Hello. Here I am with a look at this month's previews catalog, along with the DC Connect, their little catalog. This is for July 2024, and it is a big one. There's a lot of stuff in this issue. Some of the things just maybe of interest, but also a lot of decent looking things. So, gonna get to it here. I'll start off with the DC book. There was one thing I thought that I don't want personally, but I thought it was worth mentioning. Wildcats Compendium 1. So the compendium format, which I'm not sure who started that. In my mind, it started with Robert Kirkman and his Walking Dead series, doing the, sort of 40 issues for $60 in a fat paperback. And so this is a $60 paperback, 952 pages, which is pretty absurd. And it manages to collect a bunch of pretty terrible comics. But there's probably a big nostalgia thing for a bunch of people out there if you haven't wanted to go dig these things out of quarter bins, and maybe you can't find them anymore in those, I don't know if quarter bins exist too much either. If you can't find them in the dollar bins, I don't know. 90s nostalgia may have jacked the prices up on these things. So, but I just thought it was worth mentioning. I'm sure Jim Lee, being the head honcho at DC, is in no way responsible for this book existing, but who am I to say? Marvel, nothing. There was nothing of interest to me personally. Another Wolverine #1, though, didn't see that coming. In the IDW catalog, which does not need to exist, but here it is. Beneath the Trees Where Nobody Sees, the trade paperback. This collects a 6-issue miniseries, anthropomorphic. I don't really know much about it. I like the art. Story and art are by Patrick Horvath, who I am not familiar with. I've seen a couple people online talk about it. Seen a couple YouTubers talk about it. So I don't know that I'm going to order it, but in fact, I'm pretty sure I'm not going to order it. But I will definitely look at the book when it comes out and see what I think about it. Kind of what I've seen looks pretty. The art looks nice, so we'll see. What else from IDW? Neal Adams, Classic DC Artist Edition. 248 pages, $150. It's a standard-sized artist edition. Scott Dumbier left IDW, but I mean, he was talking about doing this book before, so I'm assuming it was just in the pipeline. And, this is a hefty price tag for a casual Adams fan, but if you are a hardcore Adams fan, it seems like the best way to look at his work, which is that you can look at his art in its native format, and you don't have to read the terrible stories he usually was drawing. So I like Neal Adams' art. I don't know that he's an essential guy for me, but I would sure love to look at this book. This includes 5 foldouts. Those bells and whistles are always pretty impressive on these big books. So yeah, anyway, just thought I would mention it. For Better or For Worse, The Complete Library, Volume 9. This is a book that I'll get for sure. This is the final volume. So 9 volumes, all of them about 500 pages apiece, collecting the entire run of the beloved newspaper strip. Yeah, and one that I think is underrated. So it's very nice that these all got collected. I'm sure they'll all go out of print and go for too much money in the future, and the strip will go back to being neglected. But that's the nature of physical media in our day. Let's let's look at the main catalog here. So, boom. I usually mention a Jeff Lemire series when it starts off. And so here I am showing one from Boone, Minor Arcana #1, written and drawn by him. This is his first solely authored ongoing series since Sweet Tooth, which has been quite a while. So if you're a Lemire person, there you go. Has a whole bunch of variant covers. For anyone out there who's a glutton for punishment. Now we take a big jump. Titan Comics, IL, an Osamu Tezuka book. Ablaze has been putting out Tezuka, and now we're here to get one from Titan, which is pretty amazing. Nice hefty paperback. I don't know anything about the book. I didn't even read the description. To me, anything by Tezuka is, as close to being essential for me as possible. Your mileage may vary. From Image. G.I. Joe, A Real American Hero, Volume 1. Of course, this is not actually Volume 1. This is Volume 1 of the Image run of the Larry Hama series. Collects issues 301 through 305 of the new, I don't know, I think they call it the Energon universe. It has the G.I. Joe and Transformers characters and Kirkman's Void Rivals. So, anyway, put that out there. G.I. Joe is one of my few things that I allow nostalgia for. But really only for Larry Hama, not for anybody else. Also from Image, The Last Mermaid, Volume 1. This is, I believe it's an original graphic novel. I don't think it's a collection. Doesn't say what the size is, so I'm not sure if it's manga sized or not. This is by Derek Kirk Kim. I'm trying to remember the last time he put something out. He did a sort of alternative comics graphic novel many, many years ago. I think it was called Same Difference. I don't know. I should have prepared. Sorry. Anyway, you can Google Derek Kirk Kim. He's put out some other books. But anyway, he kind of made his name as small as it was on this little alternative comic book that he did. And since then, he's done more commercial work. But it says it's his first graphic novel in a decade. And this is looks like it's some sort of a literal fish out of water story that will turn the post-apocalyptic genre on its ear. We'll see. Anyway, thought I would mention it since Derek Kirk Kim was a name from the past for me. I think I mentioned the first issue of this series, Free Agents #3, written by Kurt Busiek and Fabian Nicieza. Art is by Stephen Mooney and Triona Farrell, who I'm not familiar with. Anyway, haven't read the series, don't know about it, but I'm a Kurt Busiek fan, and thought it was worth mentioning that he has something going on. And as I always mention, Savage Dragon by Eric Larson. He's up to number 273. 27 more issues till he hits number 300. Which is a giant milestone for a guy who's actually writing and drawing his own comic. Whether you care about it or not, that's a personal thing. But I mentioned Ablaze earlier. This is a curiosity. Harvey Kurtzman's Marley's Ghost. So apparently Harvey Kurtzman had worked on an adaptation of A Christmas Carol, the Charles Dickens classic, and it never got done. So now it has been dug out of a drawer and has been adapted by Josh O'Neill don't know who that is, and Shannon Wheeler, who became known for Too Much Coffee Man. And the artist, it lists Harvey Kurtzman as one of the artists. I don't know if that means layouts. But the finished art is by Gideon Kendall, another name I'm not particularly familiar with. The cartooning here looks, perfectly fine. But I don't know how I feel about this book. I don't know how necessary it is. I'm not really sure how much of a sell Harvey Kurtzman's name is for today's reading public. Not that it would be, not that I have a problem with Harvey Kurtzman. I don't. Anyway, I also don't see any mention of Dennis Kitchen anywhere, but I believe he he's the literary executor for Kurtzman's estate. So I would imagine that he brokered this deal. But it's not mentioned anywhere. So no idea how long this has been in process, but as I said, it's a curiosity. Also a curiosity, I don't know if anybody out there has been reading this series, Torpedo 1972. I think it was a 6-issue series, maybe a little longer. The writer is Enrique Sanchez Abuli, and the artist Eduardo Rizzo and Leandro Fernandez. Rizzo, of course, is the artist of 100 Bullets and some other stuff. I believe Abuli was the original writer on Torpedo. I could be wrong about that, but that's what my memory says. Anyway, I'm interested in this. Not interested enough to pick it up, really, but yeah, I would love to hear if somebody out there has read it and thinks it's worthwhile. The original Torpedo comics are pretty fun. But and not that I think Rizzo is a wonderful artist with a lot of style, but he's no Jordi Bernay, no Alex Toth, and there's no shame in that at all. From Dark Horse, speaking of European comics that are well loved, Blacksad, They All Fall Down Part 2. I have not been keeping up with any of this. This is a 64-pager, $20 by Juan Diaz Canales. Looks like a different artist, Juanjo Guarnido. And once again, I apologize for my god-awful pronunciation. Doing the best I can. So yeah, if it's not drawn by Canales, I'm not really sure what the appeal is, since that's generally the appeal of the series. I really think that Blacksad is terribly overrated, but not to say that it's not enjoyable. I do think it's enjoyable. I just think it's terribly overrated. Okay. Also from Dark Horse, Empowered Volume 12. Does that sound familiar? It should, if you watch these videos, because I've probably mentioned it at least 4 times previously. Dark Horse has once again canceled and now resolicited it. That's also true of The Legend of Luther Arkwright, which it canceled and resolicited. This book is readily available online. You can find this book. It was printed in England. There's no reason why it isn't here yet. I don't really know what's going on with Dark Horse, but there's just quite a... Here's another one. This is a Bendis and Malieve book that's been resolicited. Here's Yellow, a graphic novel by Jay Martin that I'm not familiar with, also resolicited. So I don't know what the hell's going on over there at Dark Horse, but they're having some problems. Hopefully those are not the signs of something larger. All right. From Abrams, Cormac McCarthy's The Road, a graphic novel adaptation. This is about, the least needed thing I can think of from anybody. But the reason I'm mentioning it is because the adaptation is by Manu Larsenet, who is a pretty decent French cartoonist. So I'm mentioning it. I just don't really understand why this adaptation was necessary at all, but yeah, there you go. Right below it is a book I'm pretty interested in seeing. Drafted, a graphic novel by Rick Parker. It does not say anything about Rick Parker, and so I don't know if I'm thinking of the right guy, but was Rick Parker the guy who was a letterer at Marvel for many years and worked on the Beavis and Butthead series? Also drew cartoons for Marvel's Marvel Age magazine. If that's the same guy, I'm pretty interested, because this is just a memoir about being drafted into the Army. If it's by another Rick Parker, apologies to him for implying that it would not be interesting if he wasn't the letterer guy, but that was why I was interested. Also, an adaptation of Capital, the Ideology, by Thomas Piketty and Claire Alette. Looks like Claire Alette is the writer of the adaptation. Benjamin Adam is the artist on the adaptation from Thomas Piketty's book, Capital, which was a surprise hit maybe a decade ago, maybe longer. I don't remember when that came out. Anyway, some odd adaptations here is what I'm saying. Also, the most recent Alex Ross book, Fantastic Four Full Circle, which came out and which I heard zero mention of anywhere. Not that I'm really plugged into mainstream comics, but I just assumed I would have heard more about it from people. It just sort of seemed to come out, and that was it. Here's an expanded edition. This is 11 by 14, 350 pages, $65. So anyway, bigger platform for Ross's art, which sounds like a pretty good thing if his art floats your boat. From Avery Hill Publishing, The Scrapbook of Life and Death by J. Webster Sharp. J. Webster Sharp has put out some little stuff here and there, and this is her first book. It's 88 pages, so not hefty, but it's 8 by 12, which is a nice big size. If you're not familiar with J. Webster Sharp's artwork, I highly recommend looking her up. I don't know if she's on Instagram. I'm sure she is. You can find her online pretty easily. She is represented by Athenium Comic Art. And he has some great pieces on his website. Her artwork is unbelievable, though. This really rigorous, pointillist style. Just fantastic stuff. So, very excited that she has a book coming out. And hopefully more people will find out about her talent. From Black Panel. I believe I talked about them last month. I think they're Canadian. That may just be because I saw them at a table at TCAF and assumed they were Canadian, but here's an interesting book, Kiss the Sky, Jimi Hendrix, 1942 to 1970. The reason I'm mentioning it, one, it's interesting size, 10 by 10. That's not why I'm mentioning it, but I do think it's interesting. But the art is by Mezzo, if I'm saying that correctly. And I'm not sure where Mezzo's from, but Fantagraphics published a couple of books by him. He did a book that I guess both of these guys did. The writer is J.M. DuPont, and these guys together did a book about Robert Johnson called Love in Vain. Anyway, Mezzo's a pretty wonderful artist. So, thought it was worth mentioning. From Cinebook, the publisher I have the most love-hate relationship with. Thorgal, Volume 25. The writer is Yves Sente. The art is by Grzegorz Rosinski. We'll just say Rosinski because I'm sure I'm messing that up. Anyway, Thorgal, pretty fun series if you have any interest in that. 25 volumes, pretty well respected. And one of the bigger names amongst Cinebooks library, not quite Valerian or Lucky Luke, but up there pretty far. From Drawn and Quarterly, who I know are from Canada, the Acme Novelty Datebook, Volume 3. For some reason, this was already solicited, I thought. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Maybe I just saw an ad for it and it was discussed online a few months ago. But here is the third volume of the Acme Novelty Datebook. They're putting that out as a single volume. They're also putting out a slipcase with all 3 volumes. If you've never seen these books, the first 2 are absolutely gorgeous. They're by Chris Ware, who I should probably mention. I'm not a huge Chris Ware guy. I'll be perfectly honest. I respect him and admire the work more than I enjoy it. But the date books are his sketchbooks. I'm sure they're curated to hell. But whatever. They're gorgeous sketchbooks. They're great. I mean, frankly, they're my favorite work of his. And there aren't too many cartoonists where you could probably say that about. Crumb is the obvious example. But Ware's sketchbooks are pretty remarkable, and you really see what a fantastic, just all-around cartoonist he is. Really makes me wish he would draw something in a loose style for publication at some point. But I imagine he will not do that anytime soon. They've also got the first 2 volumes available. And then the slipcase if you want to get all 3 at once with a box. I'm sure lovingly designed. Worth looking at if you see it somewhere. This is a book I don't know anything about, really. Dog Days by Kyum Suk Jindri Kim, who also put out The Naked Tree and The Waiting, which I believe are both from Drawn and Quarterly. It's manhwa. Don't really know anything about it, but I'm going to mention it in case somebody out there does know anything about it. Also, another book I don't know anything about, Forces of Nature by Ed Steed. And apparently he is a current New Yorker cartoonist, following in the proud tradition. At times reminiscent of Charles Addams, George Booth, William Steig, Saul Steinberg, and Edward Gorey. That is a murderer's row of all-time talent. So to put him in that list is probably a bit presumptuous, but I'll try to take that how it's probably intended, which is to say he follows in that lineage. Anyway, pretty interested. I don't read the New Yorker currently, so I'm not up to date on their cartoonists. But anyway, the New Yorker has been home to many fabulous cartoonists, and I'm sure still is. A new Adrian Tomine book, Q&A. This is a book, not a comic. And let's see what he's doing here. He is answering questions from his readers with questions pulled from his time at the Substack Writers Residency, which I think I was aware of at the time, but promptly forgot about. So anyway, kind of interesting. My main problem with Tomine is that he kind of sets himself up as a truth teller, as he did in this book here, The Loneliness of the Long Distance Cartoonist. But the reality is he really pulls his punches. So I'm sure there's a lot of useful information in here. I don't know that it's going to be quite a no-holds-barred answer fest. But anyway, worthwhile, check out. I wish more cartoonists had books that weren't just comics, that were them talking about things, interviews, and the like. Tomine is, he's kind of a controversial talent. For me, he's been a diminishing returns guy for many years, but I still like his work in general. His career just didn't quite go where I was hoping it would go. which is not fair of me to say at all, but I'm going to say it nonetheless. From Fair Square, publisher I've definitely seen before in here, but have not paid any attention to. This is a book, Meshuggah. I believe it's Danish. Yeah, I think so. Christian Hojgaard and Benny Bodker are the creators. Here's a very Eisner-ish looking illustration. And it's basically a murder mystery thing set in the Jewish ghetto in Copenhagen. Kind of sounds up my alley, to be perfectly honest. But I will... I'll reserve judgment probably until I see it in person. But pretty interesting. Interesting concept, and we also just don't get a ton of Danish books. So, all right, from our friends at Fantagraphics, the usual litany. My Time Machine, a graphic novel by Carol Leigh. Carol Leigh had a weekly alternative strip called Story Minute many, many years ago. And she's published multiple things through Fantagraphics over the years. And so this one kind of came out of nowhere for me. This looks like a sci-fi cautionary political satire and rollicking time travel story. There you go. I'm not sure if this is meant to be more than one book or if this is the whole thing. Not sure why I thought that, but for some reason I had it in my mind it was a two-parter. But either way, I'm interested to see what that looks like. I did see some pages in a manuscript form and thought they were very interesting looking. Was just surprised to see a big book coming from her. Hate Revisited number 4, the last issue of this revival miniseries. Not sure if Bag will revisit these characters again in the future. I would have to believe that he probably will, but you never know. He's getting up there. I've seen mixed reviews of the series online. I enjoyed the first issue, didn't love it, but I enjoyed it. And I do think if you have affection for the old series, it's probably going to be more up your alley than if you're a new reader, just go read the old Hate for sure. I did hear that the first issue sold out, which I think took everyone at Fantagraphics by surprise. So that's pretty great. And I'm sure there will be a collection forthcoming. Occultos by Laura Perez. She put out a book, I think last year, called Totem, which is quite beautiful. A little opaque in terms of its storytelling, so not really sure I knew what the hell was going on, but I did enjoy it and interested to see this book. Really, really lovely art. Elise and the New Partisans by Jacques Tardy and Dominique Grange. This is Tardy masterly dramatizes the activist and singer Dominique Grange's gripping first-person account of the student protest that rocked France from the 60s to the 70s. Tardy is one of the great cartoonists in the world, full stop. Don't know anything about this book, but I would recommend it just because his name's on it, and I would recommend trying out Tardy wherever you can. Some books are better than others, but he's fantastic, just fantastic. Walt Disney's Donald Duck Vacation Parade by Frédéric Braumad and Federico Bertolucci. Those names don't really mean anything to me, but I did recognize this. They are the team behind the world-renowned Love graphic novels. And I don't know if you remember seeing those a few years ago. There was one with a tiger. They did one with various animals. Art was gorgeous. I never read any of them, so I can't say if they're worth reading or not, but I will say the art was spectacular. Clearly they did a Donald Duck book together, which sounds pretty interesting. Nice it's the big format they've used on a few of these things, 9.6 by 12.6. so I'm sure it will show off the art beautifully. Fabulous Furry Freak Brothers, High Times and Misdemeanors. It's hard to keep track of because they're releasing these out of order. I believe there's going to be 7. It says this is the 5th release, but that I think they just mean that in terms of when they've come out. They're releasing them out of order, so not sure which period this covers. But Gilbert Shelton and Dave Sheridan made some pretty fun comics. Definitely show their age, but Shelton is one of the best of the underground generation, and I think because he was so successful, his name doesn't quite get mentioned with some of the more serious cartoonists, but he was pretty great. Wanted to mention in this back in stock area, there's some good stuff here, like A Velvet Glove, Cast in Iron, How to Be Happy by Eleanor Davis. Great books. I wanted to mention that Doll by Guy Caldwell, his new book is imminent, I think in August. Delights, a story of Hieronymus Bosch. And to mark the occasion, they put Doll back in print. Doll is a sex comic. Reader beware. But it is thoughtful and well done and highly recommended. I love that comic. I love Guy Caldwell's work. So I just wanted to point that out. From Fantagraphics Underground, Crusher Loves Bleeder, Bleeder Loves Crusher by Thomas Stemrich and Patrick Keck. Patrick Keck was the artist on those, I don't remember what they're called, but it was basically the Batman comics that were done by Josh Simmons a couple years ago, all collected by a company in France. That are all pretty wacky. Keck is a hell of an artist, though. Don't know anything about this book, but I'm sure it is going to look amazing. Now, see here. So up here it says Thomas Stemrich, but down here in the description it says Thomas Herpick, who is a cartoonist I'm aware of, has 4 books out, and 4 comics out, not full-fledged books, but so that's a pretty interesting pairing if it's Thomas Herpick. So anyway, keep an eye out for it. I bet it will look amazing. This one I know will look amazing. Innocence and Seduction, The Art of Dan DeCarlo by Dan DeCarlo and Bill Morrison. So Bill Morrison's the guy who actually does the book, featuring all the art of Dan DeCarlo they could find. His good girl, kind of sexy art, they use sometimes risque. This book was printed before quite a while ago and has been really out of print and expensive. So here is a new version. It's expanded with even more generously illustrated. 9.25 by 12.25, nice big hardcover, 248 pages, $65, which is not peanuts, but if you like DeCarlo's art, I would recommend it. It will go out of print again, and it will become expensive again. So if you're on the fence, think about it. I love DeCarlo's art, but I'm also the perfect age that he's my Archie artist. That isn't true for everyone, of course. From Floating Worlds, Bozzelli Collected Works Volume 2. This is a resolicit. It was in the May catalog a couple months ago. Their Floating World is doing 3 volumes of the collected Bozzelli. I have not read Volume 1 yet. Looks fantastic. Great looking book. So I thought I would highlight Volume 2 again. Feast of Greece by Chris Silla. I think that's how you say his name. Apologies if I'm wrong. It's hard to explain Silla's work. Yeah, I'm not even really going to try. But this is including work from Kramer's Ergot, Study Group Comics, and Vision Quest gathered together in these pages for an all-you-can-eat album of mind-melting comics. That sounds about right. Anyway, interesting cartoonist. Don't know if this is where you'd want to start, but I'm sure it'll be a nicely made book. Heavenly Days by M. Frank. Don't know anything about this. It is described here as a mix between Ghost World, Normal People, and Linklater's The Before trilogy. So there's a melange for you. 208 pages from a cartoonist I've never heard of. That always gets my ears peaked. Vendetta, Holy Vindicator one-shot by Steve McCardle. Art by Sean McCardle. Not sure. I thought Steve McCardle was the guy who did the original Vendetta, and now this is saying Sean McCardle, so I'm not sure if that is a son, a brother, a cousin. So no idea. But this is the first new issue in 30 years. Floating World collected the original run of Vendetta in a paperback, part of their whole, I guess it's a collaboration with Power Comics, to collect, sort of off-the-wall outlaw comics, quote unquote. Speaking of YouTubers, Living the Line, Surviving on Mars by Brandon Graham. A lot of people don't like Brandon Graham because of things Brandon Graham did. Not passing judgment on that because I'm not entirely familiar with all that. I'm not a huge fan of his work just in general, but I know a lot of people are, especially on YouTube. So I thought I would mention this. There's a new book from him. His last book came out from Living the Line. So anyway, he continues to put out work. His fans continue to like it. From Magnetic, a publisher I've looked at, but I've never really bought much of anything from. And this will probably continue that trend. But I wanted to highlight these two books. Both of them are by Jim Bishop, who I'm not familiar with. Lost Letters and My Dear Perrault. I know nothing about the books. I didn't even really read the descriptions. Mostly I'm just going by the art, which has a real kind of Miyazaki mixed with, I don't know, European storybook feel to them. Pretty attractive looking. So if I see these in a store, I'm going to take a look at them, see what I think. And hopefully somebody out there will mention them and maybe tell me who the hell Jim Bishop is. Silver medal winner at the 2022 International Manga Awards in Japan. I don't know what those awards are, but maybe it's for people who work in a sort of manga style from outside of Japan, which is interesting. I had no idea that was a thing. So you learn something new every day. Someone I am familiar with from Magnetic and that I do buy, The Collected Topi. This is War Stories, a collection of short stories by master illustrator and storyteller Sergio Topi. He's great. I have a friend who thinks he's basically the best ever. Not my opinion, but I wouldn't argue with it. I think he's pretty fucking incredible. Amazing artist. If you ever get a chance to just pick up one of these books, pick it up, check it out. One of the great European masters. Deserves his reputation, that's for sure. From Michael Di Capua Books, an imprint I've never heard of. A new Jules Feiffer book, which is pretty interesting. Almost 300 pages. And that's a nice big size, but especially considering Jules Feiffer is a very old man at this point. He released a trilogy of graphic novels a few years ago, which kind of came in with some fanfare and then kind of, I think, just sort of petered out. There just wasn't enough interest, maybe. As far as I know, for all I know, they sold gangbusters. But anyway, exciting to see he's still making work at his age. Yeah, very interesting. He is one of the great living cartoonists. Though I think there's probably a lot of people who would be surprised to know he's still alive. From Pantheon. New Charles Burns. Charles Burns' Final Cut. This is a 224-page graphic novel. Only 6x9, really small size. Not that you can't make out Burns' art at any size. It's so, you know, solid and iconic looking. But, bigger the better when you're dealing with a guy like him. Also, this is kind of the summer of Burns. I mean, Fantagraphics is about to put out a book called Comics, which is a collection of sort of invented covers. I have seen that book. It looks gorgeous. And now he has a brand new graphic novel coming out from Pantheon. So, surprising. From Paper Cuts, the Smurf Tales box set 1. This collects the first 3 Smurf Tales books. I'm a big fan of the Smurf series. I love Peyo's artwork. I always find these collections be kind of tough because I'm pretty sure Peyo didn't do all of this stuff, especially when you get to a certain point. I mean, he passed away a long time ago. I wish they did a better job of delineating that. But the Peyo stuff is great. And if you ever have a chance to read any of it, please do. It's wonderful. From PS Art Books, a publisher I've discussed in here before, usually disparagingly. Not to say that they haven't published some amazing stuff. The books themselves are, I think, pretty ugly looking, but better for them to exist than to not exist. I will also say that. I really just wanted to mention this. Pre-Code Classics, Adventure Comics, Soft Tea, Volume 8. These things are always overpriced. But this one is collecting stories of Johnny Dynamite by Pete Morrissey. He was a hard-boiled private detective known as the Wild Man from Chicago. I read a Johnny Dynamite miniseries that was a revival of the character, I think from the 90s, done by the Miss Tree team, Max Allan Collins and Terry Beatty, and thought it was fine, but I've never read any of the originals, the Pete Morrissey stuff. I love this cover here. I know it might not be the easiest thing to see on whatever device you're watching this video, but anyway, that's a book that if I see it somewhere, I probably remaindered eventually somewhere, I will pick it up and take a look at it. Also thought it was worth mentioning this. PS Art Books, Classic Sci-Fi Comics Volume 8, Space Detective hardcover. I only mention this because the art, Alex Schomburg and various absolutely iconic covers painted by Schomburg. Now, I would not buy this book just to get the Schomburg covers, but I do love Alex Schomburg covers, one of the great Golden Age cover artists. Also, this book over here, Ibis the Invincible, has a lot of art by Mac Rayboy, another one of the great Golden Age artists. So, anyway, they continue to pump these things out. I'm not really sure where they go. I'm not sure who's buying them. I cannot imagine that they are sustainable. But what the hell do I know? Maybe it's just a passion project for somebody with deep pockets. From Rebellion, Smash, the Brock's Teth Devil. Not something I'm familiar with. This was a mini-series. It's been in this in these previews, but I'm not familiar with Smash. None of these mean anything to me. None of these words. But the writer is Paul Grist, who wrote Kane and Jack Staff. Really entertaining cartoonist. So thought I would mention it. From a publisher called Rocket Ship, who I am not familiar with. Tenga versus the Kaiju of Camera graphic novel. Available in softcover and hardcover. It's by Kevin Maguire of Justice League International fame. Obviously, he's done a lot of things in the years since, but I think that's still what he's known for. This was done through Zoop, I think. One of the crowdfunder platforms, I can't remember, but I think it was Zoop. Anyway, I love Maguire's art, and I'm a softie for his work. Don't know if I'm going to pick this up, but I would really like to look at it for sure. From Self-Made Hero, publisher often puts out some interesting books. Madam Choi and the Monsters. The writer is Patrick Spat. The artist is Cherie Domingo. I don't know who any of these people are. I don't know where this originally appeared. This is one where I did read the description because I really was intrigued by the cover. Thought it looked great. And it's basically the true story of an actress and actor in South Korea being kidnapped by Kim Jong-il of North Korea and forced to make movies in North Korea. And then eventually they were able to escape. But so that sounded both familiar to me and completely off the wall. And then here, They Shot the Piano Player by Fernando Tueba, Javier Mariscal, who does some of the writing and draws it. Looks like it's now an animated feature film. And this is about a guy who was, looks like one of the innovators of the bossa nova musical movement of the 60s and 70s. And then he was eventually, looks like he was killed by a regime of some kind. Anyway, both these books, out of nowhere. There's just so many books. Not just here, but just so many books worldwide. It's pretty crazy. Impossible to keep up. Even with a library card, impossible to keep up. From Shift Presents, which I'm sure I've seen that name before, but I didn't mean anything to me. To the Death, Rex and Rule. Written by Simon Furman, art by Jeff Senior. Those guys worked together on Transformers for a long time in England, and also Simon Furman worked on the US Transformers at the end of the Marvel run and for later revivals. Jeff Senior drew one of the issues from Furman's run in the US, but they worked together a lot in England. I believe they also worked on a series called Dragon Claws, which is a lot of fun. I think that was that a Marvel UK title? Anyway, he has a very idiosyncratic art style. You look at a Jeff Senior page, you know it's a Jeff Senior page. Sort of in that somewhere between Simonson and Kevin O'Neill, in that range. And Simon Furman's a guy, because he wrote Transformers when I was a kid. He's a guy that I've always been interested in. He pops up here and there, and I try to pay attention to it. From Silver Sprocket, When to Pick a Pomegranate by Yasmin Abedafard. Only 80 pages, this little collection. Really smart looking cover here. Don't know anything about it, but thought I would mention it. Silver Sprocket puts out very nice looking books, and that one looked very interesting to me. From Toon Books, which I'm always surprised is still an ongoing thing. Hearing Things. Now they have it mislisted right here. It says the writer-artist is Aaron Alexovich, but that's not what the cover says. The cover says it's Ben Sears. The art is clearly by Ben Sears. So I think somebody just messed up there. I'm trying to remember. I read a Ben Sears book that Fantagraphics put out. I think it was called Young Shadow, which I didn't care for. But I did enjoy the art, and his art is lovely. So anyway, this is obviously for younger readers, but I like to mention it. I'm glad Toon Books is still going around. They've put out some books by some very good cartoonists, even if I'm not the demographic by several decades that they're going for. From Uncivilized, Monday, a comic apocrypha by Andy Hartzell. Yeah, I don't know anything about this book. Love the cover. The cover's fantastic. Andy Hartzell is a name that I know, but I don't know why I know it. So I am, as usual, not much use to you. But thought I'd point it out. The cover looks fantastic. Uncivilized is a good publisher. They don't really put out anything that's junk. But that doesn't mean everything's a must-buy. Also, here's a comic they put out, Uncivilized Comics. They have 2 entries for some reason. Womb Rider One Shot by Emil Fries Ernst. Don't know anything about it, but once again, as I said, it's a comic from Uncivilized. So worth picking up if you come across it somewhere. From Verso, A Child in Palestine by Naji Al-Ali. And this is a collection of Al-Ali's cartoons. Introduction is by Joe Sacco. That is enough to make me pick my head up right there. And it looks like he was a cartoonist. God damn it, had it right here. So, not sure what the time frame is for these, but the 50s. So, or he was discovered in the 50s and then went on. So I'm guessing he drew maybe in the 50s, 60s, 70s, that range. Anyway, very interesting. Unfortunately, very timely. I'm sure that's why this book's being printed. But as I said, Sacco's name being attached gives it some legitimacy right off the bat. Be very interested to see this book. I have a feeling you'll be able to see it in real quote-unquote bookstores. Manga time. So, from Viz, Fist of the North Star, Volume 14. I have finally retained that they're going to be 18 volumes, so we are nearing the end here. We're in the final third. These are gorgeous books. Whether you're interested in them or not is probably a matter of taste, but very well made books. This is pretty exciting. Trillion Game, not a title I'm familiar with. This is volume 1. So looks like a smaller, it's manga size paperback, which is a little disappointing. But the reason I mention this is because of the artist, Ryoichi Ikegami, who was the artist on Crying Freeman, Sanctuary, maybe. Several of the early Viz releases back in the 80s. Anyway, fantastic artist, really palatable to Western eyes, and therefore a bunch of his stuff got released early on. I think it was seen as being like, oh, these people who are into sort of realistic, kind of stuff, they're going to like this guy's art, and a lot of people did. But unfortunately, a lot of his work is not in print now, and I've wondered for a while, when are we going to get more? So interesting that it's in a smaller format, but at least that means the price is lower, only $15. And no idea how many volumes, probably like 85, but I'm going to hope it's just a handful. And then the last thing, also from Viz, Mao Volume 18. No idea how many of these things there are going to be. I hope we're nearing the end. Rumiko Takahashi, legendary cartoonist, Ranma, Half, etc. Anyway, that's it. A lot of comics worth talking about. And I'm sure there were a lot worth talking about that I didn't talk about. but I went for the things that popped out to me. If there's anything you saw that I did not, that you think I have been remiss in ignoring, let me know. If you have any thoughts on anything I mentioned in here, also let me know that. Thanks.